And so in reflection, I was like, I think I've always had multiple ways of loving people at the same time. And I just realized that I think this is just always how I've loved. And I've always been confused by the rules of it all. Like, why? Why do I have to do that? Why? Because I love you, I have to live with you. We have to have kids. Like, why? And so I've always been that kind of like, says who kind of annoying person in the classroom who's like, who made that up though? That's just made up. People made that up. So we can make up something different.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Well, welcome to episode 390. We're Finn and Emma, and before we jump into the interview today, we wanted to take a moment and celebrate.
We got to celebrate today. We got a big anniversary.
We do. It is our 7-year podcast anniversary, birthday, whatever you call it.
Birth diversary.
I guess so.
The point is, 7 years ago, we put out our first episode 1, 7 years ago today. This week. We'll call it close enough.
That's wild.
So we wanted to say thank you to everybody out there who listens every week, or even if you've just listened one, maybe this is your first one. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
A huge thank you to all of our community members and supporters, and an extra massive thank you to anybody who's come on the show to share your story. This show would not exist without you.
It would not.
Thank you. We are super grateful to all of you. Thank you for making it possible.
Celebrate 7 years with us. Woohoo!
Here we go for another 7, right?
Yes.
Yeah?
Why not?
All right.
So today on this episode, we have a wonderful conversation with the lovely Genevieve. She takes us through the last 13 years or so of her personal journey. Genevieve is also a podcast host who hosts the show I Could Never with her partner Ishik, where they interview guests to hear their stories of exploring non-monogamy. Pretty similar to ours.
Yeah, we love that there's another show out there helping get more stories out there. So a huge thank you to Genevieve and Ishik for their work. And also you can find more of Genevieve's work over at her website, Chill Polyamory, where she offers tons of practical tools and educational resources, as well as peer support. And you can also find more of her work over on YouTube. She offers additional educational and entertainment over there. All of the links to all of Genevieve's work is in the show notes. She's everywhere. It's amazing. Please check out her work. You will love it.
And thank you, Genevieve, for coming on, sharing everything you did. We're excited to get this episode out there. And with that, for anyone who's a premium subscriber, we'll jump right into the interview now. And for anyone else, we're going to go through a few announcements. First up is our premium subscription. If you're not familiar with it, it's a way to skip these announcements up front, but don't worry, you still get important dates of upcoming events in the outro. To sign up for our premium subscription, go over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, scroll down on the homepage, and you can sign up right there for only $4 a month.
Next up, we want to remind you all of our community. If you're out there looking for like-minded, open-minded people like yourself as you're starting to explore non-monogamy, or hell, maybe you've been exploring it forever and you just want more people around you, we'd highly recommend checking out our social and support community made up of over 300 members from around the world. We host our community on a platform called Mighty Networks, where members are in there all day, every day, supporting one another and socializing. We also offer monthly community Zoom calls, in-person events around the country, and we've just started offering monthly virtual workshops hosted by incredible educators from around the world. Our next workshop is coming up on May 8th. That's next week, and it is hosted by Jolie Hamilton, and it is called Befriending Jealousy. You are not going to want to miss this one. It is going to be incredible. So you have time now to come join the community, join the workshops, and get all of this for less than $8 a month. You can find out more over on our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community tab, and you can sign up there. You can also see all of the other workshops we have coming up the rest of this year. And quick note, when you join, you get access to recordings of all of the past workshops, so you haven't missed anything.
Yes, we would love to have you come join us. And next up, we want wanted to remind all of you about 2 upcoming events that we're really excited to be attending in Northern California the next few months.
These are in person.
They are in
and
person.
separate from our community.
Yes. The first one is the Bonobo Retreat. That is going to be May 23rd to the 26th. And if you go and listen to episode 386, we had Danny on a few weeks ago talk a lot more about the Bonobo Retreat. We're going to be hosting 2 speed friending events there, and this is our first time attending. We're really excited.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. If you want to learn more about the retreat, head over to bonoboretreat.com. Again, there are links in the podcast show notes, so you don't have to remember all these things. But please, they have an amazing website that talks all about it, and we'd love to have you come join us.
The second event is going to be the Soul Play Festival, June 12th to the 15th. This is also in Northern California, and this will be our second time attending, but our first time facilitating some workshops. We're going to be facilitating speed friending there as well, and our workshop, Is There a Right Way to Do Non-Monogamy? Over on episode 387 with Holly, we talk a lot more about Soul Play, so go and listen. And also links to the website will be in the podcast show notes.
Yeah, we'd love to have you come join us at both of these. That'll be, again, end of May and beginning of June. So please, if you can make it out this way to California, we'd love to have you be there. But if you can't, we also have a way you can hang out with us virtually.
Woohoo!
Every month, Emma and I host our virtual speed friending on Zoom. It's a great way to meet people from around the world where we bring you into Zoom. We ask a question, like something to get your conversation started. We send you into a small breakout room. You talk about that question for a few minutes. We scramble the rooms, ask a new question, and do that over and over for about 2 hours. This is open to anybody and everybody as long as you're open-minded and respectful. You don't have to be a member of our community. You just have to be your amazing self, and we would love to have you come join us.
The next event is going to be on May 16th. Mark your calendars, and you can sign up over on our website on the events tab or the banner at the top of the page.
And the last thing we want to tell you all about today is our favorite way to get tested for STIs. That is stdcheck.com. It's incredibly fast, it's super simple, and it's really discreet. And when you use the links over on the resources tab of our website, you save $10, which brings the cost of a 10-panel test down to only $129, and you help support the podcast. So thank you for doing that. We really appreciate you, and we'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email, send us a voicemail. We love to hear from you, and we'd love to have you come on the podcast to share your story or to hear any of your feedback.
And with that, let's go and talk with Genevieve.
Welcome to the podcast, Genevieve. We're excited to chat today. We actually, we haven't met before, but we've listened to your work before. We kind of got connected through Libby Sinback's podcast, Making Polyamory Work, and we love to bring everybody together. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
We'd love for you to start by introducing yourself.
Sure. I'm Genevieve. I go by @chillpolyamory on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I offer polyamory peer support and education. I also do entertainment now with video essays on YouTube about non-monogamy on film and TV, as well as a podcast similar to this one of storytelling. But yeah, mostly I call myself a big sister for hire of, like if you don't have anyone that you can talk to about non-monogamy and you like my vibe, you can go to chillpolyamory.com. Let's hang out.
I love it. I'm curious, just up front, like the name Chill Polyamory. I mean, I kind of get the vibe that it's pretty chill or that you're fairly chill, but I'm curious where the name came from and what direction you kind of like have taken your work over the years.
Yeah. I mean, mostly when I first started posting about my life, it was like 2018, and it was a very small, group of people. It didn't really take off as a way of life or a career until 2020. But yeah, basically I was like, well, I don't know what to say. My life's kind of boring. It's kind of chill. I realized at the time that I didn't see a ton of people, back then talking about the relaxed routine, normalcy, the boring side of it. And a lot of people would talk to me if they were especially newer saying, oh my God, I'm so anxious. It's up and down. It's so tumultuous. And I was like, it could be pretty regular, And so that was kind of the vibe, is like, it takes a lot to really get me upset at this point in life. Like really the only things are like, I don't know, fascism. But so for the most part, I feel pretty even keel. And so I think it also is a pretty decent descriptor of me as well as a person.
Yeah. I love it. I'd love for you to start by describing kind of your relational dynamic at the moment.
Yeah. At the moment, so the more anarchistic I become, the more I'm like, what is a label and who are my partners? So I don't want to get too in the weeds of it, but
Totally.
essentially, from the outside looking in, I have one person that I'm currently building things with in a consistent way, and that's a partner that I live with, and now we are business partners as well. We work really well together. On and off, I've dated people for short and long term. Just at the moment, you're catching me when I don't have anyone that I'm building something with as well. I had several partners before I moved to Germany, and then those relationships evolved, once they became long distance. And so, it's a period of flux where now, I think I date, I hook up with my friends, I have plenty of comets that whenever they are around, or even if they're monogamous or monogamish, if they happen to be single when I see them, if we've been friends for 20 years, I'm like, okay, let's play, And so there's a lot of fluidity and just a lot of really, really at the moment, delving deeper into my friendships and having a lot more commitments with my friends. And then if a more romantic connection happens, I'm happy to invite that in too. So kind of go with the flow at the moment. Yeah.
I love it. I'm curious, but like jumping in the time machine, the Wayback Machine, when did you start to explore non-monogamy for the first time, or where did it even come into your worldview for the first time?
Yeah. It was 2012. I had a history of just being sort of nihilistic when it came to monogamy, where I was like, this is, even as a child, because I saw both of my parents get married and divorced 3 times each. And I was like, that doesn't seem even like logistically like a good idea. And so I was like a little bit pessimistic. And then I fell in love back to back twice. And I was like, I love this person. And I feel trapped by the idea of, I don't know, if I commit to them, just never, with anyone else. And so I sort of felt this pessimism of like, if I am with someone, either I'll cheat or they will. Like, I just thought that was what was going to happen. And so it was a struggle to even enjoy falling in love, because I was like, oh no, the flip side of this. I was single in 2012 when I reconnected with an old friend and we started dating, and he said, I'm polyamorous. And the minute I heard the word, I was like, there's a word for it? Okay, then that's me. Okay, like, holy shit, I want to know everything. I want to know everyone met all of the people in their life and went to some polyamory meetups. And from there on, I was like selectively telling people, depending, I was kind of taking it slow. But that was a long distance relationship for a couple of years. And then in New York, I met some polyamorous people there, got a mentor there. Yeah, so it just sort of evolved from there. But I'd say 2012 was when I jumped in and was like, okay, with certainty from day one, this is who I am. And I finally felt hopeful again.
Yeah. I'm really curious about that, because it's interesting to go from almost I don't know, if like a fear of falling in love, because, well, if I fall in love, the other shoe is going to drop eventually, to, oh, well, no, polyamorous, that makes total sense, being in love with lots of people. And I'm curious, the jump from, I don't know that I even want to fall in love, to, oh no, lots of love. Like, I'm curious how you were so sure about that.
I think I've always, especially being queer, and I'm sort of like later in coming out in life, in my later 20s, but I always was like in love with I always had one best friend who I didn't know I was in love with until we had a really bad friend breakup. And I was like, oh shit, I was in love with her over and over and over. Hindsight is much more clear. But and that was at the same time as attempting to date in sort of more straight conventional way. And so in reflection, I was like, I think I've always had multiple ways of loving people at the same time. And I just realized that I think this is just always how I've loved. And I've always been confused by the rules of it all. Like, why? Why do I have to do that? Why? Because I love you, I have to live with you. We have to have kids. Like, why? And so I've always been that kind of like, says who kind of annoying person in the classroom who's like, who made that up though? That's just made up. People made that up so we can make up something different. So I think I felt hope because it finally felt felt like there was a space that I didn't have to like contort myself to fit in to have love. I was like, oh, I can be me and have love. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's huge to kind of come into that. And it sounds like, you had role models in the sense of like your parents watching that, but like not really knowing anything else. Like that was kind of your worldview, but like it makes sense how impactful that connection of like, oh wait, there's a word for it. The mind blown, everything in the past is like, makes so much more sense because of who you naturally are.
Yeah. Yeah, it was relieving. And then to meet other people that, everybody did it differently. And the way that I've approached it has evolved tremendously over the last 12, 13 years now. So yeah, I think even just anybody who did any form of non-monogamy at that moment was kind of radical because I was raised around a lot of conservatism and a lot of like pretty traditional ways of this is what's normal and healthy is this one true path. And so I think it didn't take much for me to be like, oh, okay, there's a lot of different ways to do this. So I want to be around all of it. It was relieving that there wasn't just one answer.
Yeah. And you are originally from the U.S., correctly?
Yeah.
And then now you live in Germany.
Now I live in Germany since 2020, since March of 2020, which is a weird time to move internationally. But yeah, I was raised in the American South, in Georgia, and then in Florida, and spent a lot of time in New York as well. My primary polyamory community before Berlin was in New York. But I met a lot of people in Orlando and Central Florida that really helped me when I was getting my sea legs.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious what that looked like when you jumped in. You kind of said like, I wanted to meet all the people. You were introduced to it. What did those first couple of weeks, months that you were jumping into something brand new like this? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was just like on cloud nine, before, like, just because I was so relieved to find people. I think they ultimately, like, I was not yet aware. I still had a lot of hangups when it came to kink, for example. People were very kinky and very open, and I still had all of this programming. It's like, I'm down to love multiple people, but I'm really uncomfortable around that, of like, if you're walking someone around on a leash, I don't know what that is. And then meanwhile, now in Berlin, people walk each other around on a leash in like the grocery store. It's like the kinkiest city, and it's chill. But like, yeah, so just as an example of the arc, that I've had since then. Yeah, so I think I was a little bit tight and scared of everything I didn't know while being eager and curious. I did really want to have, I think because I had only ever seen it one way, and I think this is true for a lot of people, I was like, oh, okay, so if I have one primary and everybody else is just bonus sometimes, then that's the only thing that I can conceptualize. And so I was pretty like rigid because I was scared for the first year or two. And so I got some pushback from people, I think reasonably so. And yeah, so it was up and down. And I think as it goes for any period of growth and change, it's like sometimes I liked going to events, sometimes I felt stressed going to events. Sometimes I didn't really super feel welcome. I think that was an interesting thing in the early days is I'm a cis woman, and I remember there was this party that the people in Central Florida were throwing that was like a gender bending party, and it was a lot of queer and trans people there, and I was newly out as queer, and I've always been like, I don't know, not really femme most of my life, and I've changed my name now, but I used to have a name that was a lot more androgynous, was chosen on purpose to be like kind of masculine as like a strategy so that on paper I wouldn't be discriminated against. It was like this long plan of like masculinizing me. And so I was going to this gender bending party and I was putting on a suit and I was like, I don't want to do, like, I don't feel good in this suit. So I'm going to wear like Katy Perry cartoon colors. And because I never am that, cartoonishly cute and girly. And there wasn't a whole lot of understanding in or empathy from that group at the time, I think, because there was a lot of baby queer and baby trans folks that they saw a cis woman coming in saying, I'm not going to do the gender bending thing. I'm going to go full femme. And there wasn't a lot of nuance around that, you know? And so I got sort of like, you know, misunderstood, I think, misunderstood. And I also didn't have the language to articulate my complex relationship with gender. So I think that is an example of like how also in non-monogamy, we were all in our early 20s. We were kind of leading each other, but we're just brand new too. So in non-monogamy, I would have moments like that where people would push back on me and I'm like, is this real or is this just like your shit, you know, that you're pushing back on me and like I actually haven't done anything wrong, if that makes sense. So
yeah, it makes total sense. And I just, as you're telling that, like I'm just thinking about those moments of for anybody doing something brand new, right? But especially in this space of exploring your gender, your sexuality, your queerness, to show up in a space where you're like, I don't really know how to be, but then to not even feel what, like, right? Maybe you're so early on in this that you present exactly as you were assigned at birth or whatever stage of it is for you. And you show up in the space and you're like, but I feel like this is my place, but I'm not really feeling welcome here. That's a tough place to land right at the beginning of that journey.
yeah, I think it happens for a lot of people, especially like the younger and newer that the group is.
Yeah.
That's why I'm always like, if a community can have multiple generations and like new experience and long timers, because like when it's a bit homogenous like that, we can maybe offer each other a little less grace because we don't have a lot of relaxation in our own selves, you know, with it. So yeah, but I mean, I think organically getting older, learning a lot more about myself, like I had the language to be able to say, please don't misunderstand, this is what I mean, you know, in multiple ways. But there was also, I think my peers just gradually got a bit more comfortable in their own skin too. And so I think some of that is just growing up in general, you know, you are a little less militant than maybe in your early 20s. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I mean, I can see too, right? The flip side, if you're creating that space and you're trying to really push all of the limits and you're trying to shed all of this and people show up and they're almost reinforcing everything that you're trying to get away from. Like, I understand the sort of the pushback and the fear there as well. So it's just like I feel like these are the spaces where we have to show up with like so much grace and empathy and compassion for one another to be like, okay, we're all trying here. Like, how can we just try together in a way that like holds everybody?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think my community now, or my communities now, because they're not, I don't think any polyamorous group is just like one community, but I think there's a lot more variance. Like we all come from different places. And so, yeah, I think there's just a lot more softness. And maybe that's also just a time of the generation of like, we're all in this together. Like, let's not attack each other, you know, type of deal. I think there's a lot more investment in trying to not throw people away or, read bad intent on people as maybe there used to be.
Yeah. I'm curious, you know, kind of how, as your journey continues, where does it go from like these exploratory early stages?
Yeah, I was with that first partner that I mentioned for about 2 years. 1 year after we met, so we were long distance. 1 year after we met, I met one of my mentors, spent a lot of time with her. She was dating, her husband and her boyfriend both wanted to ask me out. So I went on a date with her husband, didn't super hit it off, but I went on a date with her boyfriend and flash forward, this is a partner that is still in my life and we live together and we have a podcast together. So like, yeah, that was 11 years ago that I met him. But it was all very cool. It all like grew rather slowly. There was an overlap of time where I did have those two significant partners. And when the first one would like fly up to New York, all three of us like hung out. And yeah, I wound up ending the relationship with that first partner because he was cheating on me and was sort of like using this gray area of non-monogamy agreements to be able to I don't know, lawyer his way into here's why it actually wasn't cheating, asterisk, asterisk. And I'm like, well, I super feel betrayed. So like, you definitely withheld stuff. So, there was a lot of like learning that somebody following like the letter of an agreement technically still might not be following the spirit of the agreement. It's like, yeah, you still lied though, man. So yeah, that went on for about 8 months before I realized it was cheating. And I will give monogamous people that. I think they have a little bit clearer, lines in the sand. But yeah, and so that relationship ended, and then I've had a variety of really nice, close relationships that ebb and flow since then for years at a time, usually often from friendships or mutual friends. There have been handfuls of times when I've met somebody on a dating app, but yeah, for the most part, sort of like stems from community. So yeah, but I don't know. I could get into more anecdotes. I don't know how specific between then and now you're wanting.
No,
a decade's hard to cover.
Totally. No, it's great. I think I love to just it popped into my head the thought earlier about like getting away from labels and with cheating being a label, right? That it's like you can use it, like you said, almost weaponized. Like, well, hey, by the letter of the law, this wasn't cheating, and to back up and be like, well, it still felt like shit. So like maybe we need to talk about, rather than was it exactly cheating or not, what are we doing? What that didn't feel great. What are our agreements? How do we do this? And I think it can be so easy, especially when you're new to this, to not catch some of that and be like, well, they didn't cheat. We're non-monogamous. So I guess I'm just supposed to feel shitty. And like, that's not, it doesn't have to feel shitty, right? Like you don't have to go through that.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't feel shitty. Yeah, it shouldn't feel shitty.
Yeah. And like, look, like I think it can be tough to really parse, especially in the beginning or especially during periods of change. I won't even just say in the beginning, because like anytime there's a change or a first, I'm like, well, I have some maybe volatile emotions because I don't like change, or I'm scared, or you mean a lot to me and I don't want to lose you. And so the stakes feel very high. And so it can be hard to parse like how much of my reaction is just like my stuff and how much of it is that what you did wasn't cool. And with that first partner, the way it finally, we like literally got out paper and pens and wrote down every specific agreement. I try not to, I don't know. I don't really want to like have contracts with people personally, but but because we went too far in the other direction in the beginning, we didn't have clarity really, It was like, oh, if you hook up with someone, tell me. Okay, well, when? Before? After? What is hookup? What is sex? What do you mean when you say sex? Because when I say it, I include this. You don't include this? It was like we weren't even defining, like, tell me if you have a sleepover. Okay, does a sleepover mean sex? Or did I crash on your sofa? It's like... So
we didn't sleep, so it wasn't a sleepover.
Exactly. I was over there till 6 a.m., but we didn't sleep. It was like there's a whole lot of, I think, attempts to clarify things. But then if you're still using euphemisms or you're still using like shorthand, but you've not defined that shorthand, it can get really tricky. And so, yeah, I finally like sat down with him, and the whole time I had been assuming that it was just an accident, just a misunderstanding. And next time, let's clarify it, and next time it won't happen. And it kept happening for like 8 or 9 months. We sat down, we named everything in a really intensely specific way, and then he did it again. And I was like, okay, so now I know, it shouldn't have to come to that, honestly. These days, if I get weird vibes from somebody, or if they seem like they're withholding or shady about information, I'm like, you can stay at arm's length, But yeah, I think I've gotten a lot better at spotting when someone is making an honest attempt to follow through and take care of you versus when they're kind of like thriving in the gray area of what they can get away with.
Yeah, that's a really big difference.
Yeah. We can mess up, absolutely. Or we thought we were doing it and then, we're on the wrong page. But I think what matters is what happens after that. If it keeps being like accidentally a misunderstanding, I'm like, well, maybe that's not by accident then,
Right. Yeah. I loved what you said a few minutes ago about the spirit of the agreement. And I think that to me is often what I try to like look to is right the core of like, what was the spirit of this? And I tie it in. I grew up I didn't grow up playing ultimate frisbee, but I played a lot in college, and there's no referees in that sport, and it's all about the spirit of the game, and we want the game to keep going. We want everyone to keep having fun. And I think often I see polyamory and non-monogamy in some of that similar light, right? There's no one going to come in and say it was cheating. We have to look at what we're doing and talk about, like, what are we trying to accomplish together? What are we trying to do together? And I love that you're like, you didn't, it's like you said, you didn't want to have to get out pen and paper and go through line by line, but like you almost get sort of pinned into it.
I felt crazy. I felt crazy.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
so I must keep not being clear. Let me be super fucking crystal clear. Oh, wait, you were just willfully not listening to me. Yeah, exactly. I think the what you described with the game is pretty on point. Like, is somebody a teammate or not, because if you put a hard line in the sand of what exactly this is cheating and that's not cheating, there will always be people who dance right up to whatever the line is.
Yep.
Well, I technically didn't do it. There's like people who want to be there, and I just don't have time or energy for that anymore. Cause there's enough upsetting things in the world. Like, I don't want to voluntarily welcome somebody into my life who will, be that careless or even that like selfish, with our agreements.
Right. Yeah. Do you have to always toe the line? Can you, like, it's okay. You don't have to go right to it and then test it every single, like, could put a toe over. Was that okay? Was that okay? Right. Yeah. It's exhausting.
Well, it's also why when people say like, people who don't understand non-monogamy, when they're like, oh, it's just cheating, or, oh, we've cheated, so maybe we should be non-monogamous. And I'm like, if somebody wants to get away with something, if somebody has a high on like sneaking around, then they'll do that in a different way in non-monogamy, right? Like, so it's not about that at all. It's about like, are they on board with trying to like not hurt you and vice versa, or do they just want to do whatever they want to do? Not always easy to tell, at first, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not. And I'm kind of curious too, like, it sounds like as you went through non-monogamy the last 10 years, decade, you met somebody that has been in your life that almost that whole time, or more than 11 years. But it also sounds like you had multiple other connections, relationships with people, and some of them were friends. And can you talk a little bit about how you navigate the relationship changes, like going from friends to more than like a different level of connection, intimacy, and then maybe back to friends? Or how have you navigated that? Because it feels really like amazing and also very tricky at times.
It can be really tricky if it's not done thoughtfully. Like I think this is just how I've always been. Like, I've always worked with friends. I've always wanted to do collaborations and projects with friends. But then you're adding a lot of different roles on top of each other, right? So like a lot of my best friends would also be like my clients, would also be sometimes my hookups, and maybe they would want to go out with one of my partners. So now there may be a meta. And like, so all of these different hats that we're wearing at the same time, it can be nice because I'm like, oh, you're great. You'll be great in other areas, which is often true, Yep. But sometimes like it can get confused. There was a very close friend of mine that they were my client, and we were really supporting each other through a lot of different things. And I thought we were like really significant friends. And it turned out that like they were kind of seeing me almost like a maternal figure. They were like, oh, you're my rock. Like, you're my everything. And like, I kind of hadn't been in a hard place in my life for like the 5 years that we'd known each other. And then in 2020, the minute I started to have some mental health issues, I'm in a new country. I don't know anybody. I'm like not okay. And they lived here in this country. And I was like, can I lean on you? Like, they just disappeared.
Wow.
They were just like not. And so a friendship ended because we didn't really outline. And we also paused our work together because it was in an industry that was closed during lockdowns. So we weren't working together, and now our friendship had altered, I guess, a power dynamic that we hadn't named, or at least roles that we hadn't clarified of like, I don't want to always be your rock. I'm happy to, but I would love for that to be reciprocal. So there have been some painful friend breakups, or just like, breakups with people that I'm close with, over a lack of like really naming those things. And so, it can honestly, like when I've introduced sex with my friends, it hasn't so far been too big of a deal. It's often been like, hey, do you want to be spicy friends? Do you want to like hang out? Do you want to have sex sometimes? You're really cute. I like to make out with my friends. Do you also make out with your friends? Like trying to understand if I don't think something is a big deal, it doesn't mean they won't think it's a big deal. Like if I sleep over and we have breakfast in the morning, like I'm going to go home and have a good day. Are you going to want me to call you later? Are you going to want me to like text you tomorrow, or will you feel abandoned? Like what is each person's like expectation kind of from this? Because a lot of people, especially friends of mine that are like maybe a little bit less experienced in non-monogamy, or maybe they're even monogamish, I'm like, we got to translate here because what I do, I might be doing something that you're interpreting it differently. And I got into a lot of trouble with that accidentally in college. Before I was even non-monogamous, like I would hook up with somebody and they were the ex of somebody else I knew. And there was an expectation there that I should talk with my other friend who was their ex before I hook up with, or that it was a betrayal that I hooked up with them because, and I'm like, well, you don't date them anymore. You used to date them. What does that have to do with me having sex with them? I was very confused, by the rules there, And so that's something I really like about non-monogamy is like it necessitates talking about all that stuff. And even if you mess up or you didn't have a conversation you should have, like then it's pretty normalized and even expected to then talk about it. So for that reason, every time I've had sex with somebody like or had a friendship that turned into a partnership and back, it's been just a lot of like slow conversations of how would you feel about this? Or do we do that now? Or, would it be weird if I started texting you a lot? Would you think I now want more with you? Because I just want to text you a lot right now, So yeah, I think it tends to go fine as long as we're like saying the subtext too. So that there's no reading into anything, or misunderstandings to the best of our ability.
Yeah. That's such, as you're talking, I'm like, yes, yes. And that's not always easy to do. But at the same time, when you can talk about those things and allow room for missteps and then go back and have a conversation about it, that's really like, I don't know, that's the power of, it feels so supportive in connections in general, like human connections, to have that openness and grace for each other, but also transparency as much as possible and be able to meet each other where you're at. And like, I don't know, it also takes quite a lot of emotional maturity in that too, be able to have those conversations often. But it can really, I just love the way you described that of like how fluid that can be. And I think it's so refreshing considering like our society has like, you have to do, this is how you do relationships and this is how you do it. And it's like, no, there's lots of ways to do relationships. You just got to talk about it.
Yeah, I never intuited it at all, ever. I was like, well, why is it weird that I told you that you're handsome? Like, I'm not hitting on you. You're objectively handsome, in my opinion. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just saying a fact, And so always people would be like, what are you trying to do? Or what's your angle? And I don't know. I really thrive in places where we can just double check and that's normalized, Or like, hey, could you not tell me that, because it makes me feel a type of way. Okay, I don't have to tell you you're handsome. Like that's totally fine. But just don't assume that I'm like doing something underneath what I'm saying. I'm just, trying to be transparent. So yeah, I think it was the first time that the communication style that like I organically come with is like saying things kind of bluntly or transparently. I've always been like a terrible liar, like just terrible at it. So I thrive in this kind of setup because above and beyond just loving people in many ways simultaneously, I love that we're all trying to make sure nobody's in the dark on anything. We're all trying to talk about everything pretty openly, and that makes me feel safe. Like no surprises.
Yeah. I love this conversation, Genevieve, because this is something that we've both been trying to get better at. I would say even within our own partnership, we've had a ride around this. But I think as we've started exploring in different ways ourselves, it's sort of really being clear with people about what it is I'm looking for and what are you looking for? And then what are our expectations around that? And I think the way you described that is really just, it's so relatable. And I think at the same time, it's like, we sometimes go in thinking, oh, I'm here looking for this. And then 2-3 months later, you're like, uh-oh, I'm not there anymore. Like I think there's also then like a need to sort of keep sort of checking in with it. And I'm curious for you, what have you found in terms of like, I've also heard people get annoyed, right? They're like, oh, why do we have to keep talking about it? It's killing the mood. If you ask me if we want to have sex, that kills the mood, which is supposed to be spontaneous. But I'm curious what your actual experience has been with this in the real world. Because I think for sure it does kill the mood for some people, but I know for me, it's like, that is the mood. The mood is like, let's talk about this until it's almost annoying and then move forward. And that's just me, but I know that's not everybody.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't relax unless I know that we're on the same page. I can't relax unless like I know I'm understood. So I'm not going to have fun in sex probably or any other kind of thing because I'm going to be in my head or I'm going to be performing what I think you want for your fantasy, you know? And so then I'm not feeling pleasure, which was like a huge relationship with sex for me for a long time, was just like, who do I need to be in this moment, you know? And just completely disconnected from like, what do I want with you, you know, in this moment of connection. So yeah, I think I struggle to really connect with people unless we talk about things. And we don't have to like talk about it at the same moment, you know, if they feel like two different modes. But yeah, we could talk about things at dinner and then go play after dinner or something like that. But to that end though, I mean, my personal style is pretty direct in the moment and there's a lot of fluidity. Like I'll be laying next to someone and be like, hey, do you want to have sex? You know? And so we'll have sex. And not everybody that's not everybody's vibe. I've definitely had people be like, ugh, you know, like bothered that I didn't have any magic or mystery to it. And I'm like, just like I was saying before, it's like, I don't know. I'm telling you what I want to do. Like it's going to be fun. We can put on some music. We can have a beer. Like, yeah. And so I think some of that is just like maybe an incompatibility in terms of like what people like. But I do think that a lot of people have like arousal or play or fun in the like in what's not said or in what's like inferred or implied. And that's just never felt safe to me because I'm like, well, then one or both of us could do something that the other is unhappy about later. And I don't want to find out after, or I don't want to have to say it after. Like it's a bummer if I bring it up. Like I don't want to be touched like that. Like, so yeah, I've always wanted to say things ahead of time. There's always room for spontaneity. I talk about like planning for spontaneity, you know, of just like heads up, here's some things that in general I like people to know. But so yeah, there can be like caution to the wind I talk about like if you jump out of a plane, just make sure you've like got your you know, like safety belt in and your parachute on, and like you can have riveting adventure as long as you've taken the precautions. And I think communicating clearly is a big part of that.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's amazing. And I think too, right, you touched on it in here too, is right, what your definition of adventure is, right? If it's, I like to make sure I'm really safe and set the container, and then we can build in, like you said, planned spontaneity, right? Like if you're laying next to somebody and they're like, you took away all the mission, like, well, I can leave the room and I'll pop back in and you don't know when. Like we can play with this and have fun with it. And also I know there's people that are like, nope, I can't do it. If you even start down that path, it takes it away. And then having to be able to be like, great, you and me, we're not probably going to have a good time down that path. So like, let's figure out what relationship we can have. We can be really great friends who support each other or whatever it is. And I think some of that is just being comfortable having those conversations up front. And I'm dwelling on this because I love normalizing this part of it. That like, can we talk about it and figure out what works for both of us? And if we're not a good fit, then let's just happily be not a good fit.
Yeah. I think I had a lot of like, and I do have empathy for people who might struggle with those conversations because a lot of us have hangups if you're raised around purity culture like I was. So it can put you in a very different headspace of like shame or, you know, if you're talking about it, a lot of us have trauma, self-included. So then it can like really be like, oh, well, now I'm thinking about my childhood. It's definitely not hot, you know? So like, I have empathy for like, if having those conversations can't happen in the same day or the same moment, but they should be happening. And yeah, because otherwise it could exacerbate any problems. Maybe you get lucky and you have a nice time, or maybe you have like a really bad time because you didn't know how to protect each other, keep each other safe.
Yeah. I love that too, right? Yeah, have the conversation a week ahead of time or at dinner, and then clear your palate with ice cream, and then head to the bedroom, right? Like there's a million ways to do this, and I think we just like get to choose our own way of doing it.
I'm gonna steer the conversation a little bit,
Sure.
but I was curious. You made a big move, and a few years ago in a global pandemic. That's not like, I'm sure that was not on your plan, but relationally, it sounds like, well, one of your partners went with you, but how did that whole thing work for you as far as like with other connections and making that big transition?
Yeah. At the time that it was a long process of many years that I wanted to move to Berlin since like 2016. And I didn't really get the plans going until 2019 and then moved in 2020. So it was my own plan for myself for a lot of years. The partner that I moved with was sort of like on the fence. And I was like, you don't got to come with me. This is my life. Like you can stay here. We'll figure it out, And so it was some years of like sort of thinking, I think that might be fun, or I might be down with that, or there's nothing keeping me here, And so, but I had another partner of about 4 or 5 years who at the time was permanent, was very set on, I've got a business here. I've got long-term friendships here. I got no desire to go. I'll visit you, but now we'll be 9 hours time difference if you move there, And so what does that look like? And so we evolved quite a bit, and that person was also at the time kind of like questioning, oh, am I maybe ambiamorous? Am I maybe wanting something a bit more monogamish? I don't know. This was a friend that had turned into a partner, and we were together for 5 years, and he was questioning it the whole time. And I was like, okay, you just keep me posted. And it was a very thoughtful, included thing of over the course of 6 or 8 months of just saying, I think I met somebody that I might want to spend a lot more time with. How are you doing? And, all the way to the point of realizing well, I think I might want to be monogamous with this person, and you're moving across the country or across the world anyway. And I was like, you do you, that's painful. I don't want to act cavalier. It's always sad when there's a transition that excludes some things. It's sad to let go of somebody in a certain context, but I also don't want to cling to it or force it if that's not going to feel like everybody is excited about that or everybody wants that. So yeah, that kind of just sort of those waves happened at the same time. I needed to legally marry the partner that I'm with because I had a case for a visa and he didn't. And so I was talking with everybody in my life, including people that, I don't know, might become closer partners, but we've only been dating for some months. And I was like, how do you feel? And the partner that I mentioned before, he was like, well, so what's a path to divorce if that's ever needed? I know this is something you're doing for a means to an end because we have limited resources in terms of limited options because of the state. But, is that a forever thing and what does it mean? And so we had a lot of complicated talks about what is marriage under an anti-hierarchical point of view, but then you're literally giving someone legal rights that other people don't have. I put that other partner on my will and, power of attorney if I should be, so there were ways that we just sort of balanced it in different directions. And that felt good to everybody, And so I wasn't asking permission of people because I wanted to go and the only other person that wanted to go too was this one partner. I think it would be a lot more complicated if more than one person wanted to come with me. So maybe I got a little lucky that it was simpler that way. But yeah, that tended to be how that went. I never thought I would sign a document to include the state in my love, but if it avoids deportation, I'm into it. And
it's one of your kinks, huh?
Yeah.
Pretty big into avoiding deportation myself.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's what we're doing for now. And my hope is to move soon in the next year or two into a bigger space that can at least have space for more people, but at the very least be able to welcome partners so that they feel like we don't have to do trade homes, or somebody stays out, or somebody, gives you space in the one bedroom so you can have a date night. Like, I'd love to have more space if possible. It's a luxurious thing, but as well, like I'm totally open to my living situation being solo at some point or with multiple people at some point, so there's a lot of flexibility depending on which way the wind feels like it's blowing, and it feels like the conversation's always open with everyone.
Yeah, I love that. And I just appreciate you sharing, because that's something that I'm sure a lot of people go through, of like making big life decisions or moving and having to navigate that. And like you said, it's not complicated. There's a lot of complicated conversations, or especially when you're legally marrying somebody and like all of that. It's a lot to navigate. So I appreciate you sharing.
And it's tough because you have your best intentions, but the distance is really hard. And like, I think a lot of my partners, I tend to be drawn to people with ADHD. And so a lot of people, like, it's a little bit out of sight, out of mind sometimes is how their brain works. And that's not a slight against me, but it can be painful to be like, oh, I'm real good with like scheduling and consistency and calendars, but like your concept of time is flexible.
That's a very diplomatic way to put it.
and that's part of why I love you, because we're so different, but also like at a distance, there's a little bit of like, when I've connected with people who are a bit more structured as well, then we've been able to stay on top of being connected. Whereas sometimes the distance, just like despite your best efforts, it's just not organically like fitting. And so then you wind up sort of adding some emotional distance. And, maybe if we're not talking all the time, then I don't need to know when you hook up with someone new. We stop doing that and you just tell me whenever I talk to you next. And it starts to feel like you're just adding this space that maybe neither of you wanted. And that's just how it goes, So that happened with a couple of people. There was also a dear friend from like 15 years ago that we became partners for the better part of a year. And once they realized that they didn't want to move to Berlin because they were thinking about it, once they realized they didn't want to come here, completely stopped, showing up to our video dates, completely withdrew and deprioritized our connection without even talking about it. And so I also realized, like, despite our best efforts of talking about things, like, sometimes people really have some all or nothing thinking of like, well, if we're not going to be local partners, then where is this going? Then what are we even doing? And still have some of that like escalatory thinking that like, okay, well, but can't we still talk once a week like we did for the last year? Or no, now that you don't want to move here, now you're going out on a date with somebody new that you can do that with, And so that kind of thing can happen. And so yeah, even if you talk about it a lot, you can still surprise each other or surprise yourselves with what your priorities wind up being. And we just try to keep like naming whatever's true, even if it's not what's comfortable or popular.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Genevieve, and I'm like maybe just curious, bringing it back to the name of Chill Polyamory. I mean, you kind of said like right at the beginning, like it's sort of just, it is a bit of who you are, and just hearing your story is so much like pragmatism. Like you're just very like, this is what it is, and this is how we do it. And I love that. And I'm just curious, was it always that way for you, or did you sort of have to find your way into the chillness around polyamory, or did it just was it a bit natural for you?
I think when I've had partners that I could definitely trust that their words and actions were going to match, then ease came rather quick.
Yes. Yeah.
But my first relationship that I mentioned, because there was so much fuckery going on and there was cheating that I didn't know was cheating, I was like, is this just what polyamory is? Where I'm just like upset every day?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got in other relationships that weren't like that. And I was like, why is this so much easier? And so I think there's a set of conditions that if I can know that I'm not going to be surprised, to the best of our ability, if I know that I'm not being lied to, then I feel pretty at ease with whatever is true or whatever winds up being how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's more it, is that as long as I feel trusted, respected, and like no big change is going to blindside me, then I'm pretty much at ease. And so that can go away again, I've had relationships in the last 4 or 5 years here that felt a lot more volatile, or a lot more, what is this? Or what are you even thinking? Or you said you really care about me, but we've spent 2 hours together this month. Why is that? It feels incongruous, so it stresses me out when you say one thing, but we're doing another, and it would appear, can we talk about it? And so, yeah, I can get dysregulated again when I feel like for some reason, like something's not being vocalized. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have the desire to like force anything into a certain shape. And I mean, I don't know how much you know about my story, but I'm a survivor of a cult, and so I've been in and I was raised by a very authoritarian parent. And so I've had authoritarian like leadership very much in the home. And then when I ran away from home and stayed with this community, it was also structured in a very similar way with a lot of authoritarianism and rigid hierarchy of like, you got to climb the ladder, or, they can break the rule, but you can't because they're higher up and closer to the leader. It's like all of that. And so I think ever since I've been in adulthood and been able to shape my own life, I'm like, I just don't want there to be anything like that. And so as long as I feel like we're all on equal footing and nobody's trying to tell anybody what to do, then I'm not going to feel the need to try to control or, be hypervigilant or militant about anything.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine coming out of that, coming out of a cult, coming out of those types of structures, you're fairly, I'm guessing, sensitive and attuned to this really doesn't feel right.
Yeah, like any energy that feels something similar to that.
Yeah. And as like, I even will see people and have compassion for them, because I know that a lot of like militance and hypervigilance comes from a place of just like fear, And so if somebody's trying to control, like I go on a date with somebody and they're like, well, my wife says we're not allowed to do this and that. I'm like, have a good night. Like I empathize with it. I ain't going to bring it close. It's like both can be true, And so I don't really condemn anyone for being wherever they're at. But I just know what definitely brings out the worst in me. And so if I'm going to be like the best version of myself, then I have to curate who I bring close and in what kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to talk a little bit before we let you go about community and how the importance that community has played in your journey of non-monogamy, and also how do you sort of, I don't know, vet or kind of keep an eye out for community versus cult, and having been in both, because I think sometimes, it can be a blurry line in some cases, and I'm curious how you have navigated that for yourself.
The core difference is how the power dynamics are structured. Like if there's a central authority figure, if there's anybody who's being deified or elevated as like the wise one in the group, sometimes people will even want to do that to a person. Like the person's not seeking it. People have tried to put me on a pedestal. I'm like, you better take me off. You better take me off it. Like I'm human, I'm flawed. Here's all the ways I've messed up just so I can, three-dimensionalize myself in your mind. Because I think, but there are people who I think even if they're not aware that they're doing it, if they get that sense of like power over a person, or like, oh, you're going to do what maybe I am a guru, then that can feed into itself. And there are a lot of people who are just desperate or scared, and they just, please tell me what to do. Tell me how to live my life, And so I know exactly why cultic spaces can form, but really if there's a centralized power, if there's money involved, if anyone's profiting from you being in a space beyond just like making back whatever expenses for the party or whatever, if there's like any sort of like in-group, out-group, you're either with us or you're against us, that tends to be more of what I am wary of. I'm wary of instant pop-up community. Like if there is a community that exists, they should be skeptical of me if I'm new. Maybe they're welcoming, but they're not love bombing me. They're not like, I'm not their sister now. Like they are also vetting me, and I want there to be that kind of slowness, because relationships build in a slow way, trust builds in a slow way. And so we can know like, hey, you're cool. I'd love to have you around more. But that's very different than like, oh, you are instantly home. you know? And so while I've been in places where I'm like, oh, I found my people, the one-on-one relationships really take a lot of time to feed and water, you know? And so I really was anxious and scared about going to any like group events or polyamory meetups for a lot of years. And a lot of my groups still remain rather like small, you know, handfuls of people or one-on-ones, and then they meet each other, you know, because yeah, I think group dynamics can be a bit overwhelming. Group pile-ons, like it publicly humiliating people and calling it helping them. That was my life for a long time. And so, and being cast out, you've messed up once, so you're cast out forever. You know, I think just like continuing to have nuance around like, yeah, we don't want to bring people close who are going to do us harm, but we're also trying to not like throw people away necessarily. So yeah, that tends to be where I distinguish it is like, yeah. Is there like a lateral power dynamic system? Even if there are people in roles of authority, like, are they still accountable to you, or do they just have ultimate authority, if that makes sense? Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. But I think for anyone who's like struggling, I think a lot of times people are like abandoned by their communities. Like for me, I had a community, but they were really unhealthy for me and like really abusive. And so I left and suddenly had no one. And I think that's not uncommon. Like anyone who grows up in a conservative area, maybe you had a church that you went to, but you're gay and now they hate you or whatever. Like, so there's a lot of people who have to start over from scratch. And then I just say like one at a time, like go to a place, meet one person, you know, and maybe they know a couple of cool people, and just start slow, because community really is built like connection by connection. And it's going to have a lot of disparate connections. You're not going to be close with everybody. And yeah, to not rush it. But if there's anybody that you feel like you can let your guard down with, or you feel safe with, that you're not going to be judged or controlled or told what to do, then maybe like hang out with them a little bit more. And, you know, just one day at a time. It can grow fat. Everybody wants more friends. Really, especially polyamorous people. Every polyamorous person wants more polyamorous friends. So I'm always like, don't be shy, you know, but like, yeah, I am wary of people who are eager to cast themselves as an authority on a subject.
Yeah. And I love what you said about like the slowness in it, the slowness it takes to build trust, build connection over time. I mean, you have to be in that process because that is the process, right? To really vet people, like, and how
spaces.
Right. That you're vetting, like you said, if in a new community, a new group, like you're vetting them, but they're also vetting you. And that's part of the process. And it can be easy to want to move much faster because that can feel more comfortable sometimes. But when you move slower, we've seen that in the growth of our community for sure.
Well, and when you're new and if you've been out on an island not finding any support or anybody, and all of a sudden you find it, like it can be so exciting, and the energy can be there, and you're like, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to share everything, I'm going to post all the stuff, and then pretty soon you're like, oh, I was a little vulnerable. Like the vulnerability hangover can kind of creep in, or just like there's a lot. So I think exactly that, like this, it's okay to like be a little slow, but it's also okay to like get excited about it too, because it is exciting when you land in a new space like that.
Yeah. I definitely don't want people to like think that getting really excited and wanting to jump into the deep end is like a bad sign, you know?
Totally.
Totally.
It's more of like, if the community is now saying like, welcome, you're home, and like love bombing you and stuff, like that tends to be more of a flag for me.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, it's easy to feel impatient of like, I'm lonely. I want a bunch of friends tomorrow. But yeah, I just say beware like instant pop-up community. Like maybe if it's around an event, like if you're going to a kink party and, you know, but if it's like people who are doing like every activity with each other, and if it feels like there are like a lot of rules for entry and stuff, like, I don't know, I go slow. I stay cautious. I don't like swipe everything with a broad brush by any means. I think actually people call too many things cults. Like So, but yeah, just to be a bit self-protective. And then I think it is actually easier to start letting people in slowly, but I don't know. Each person's going to be on a different ride of what they're
Totally.
sure.
of what they're discovering. Yeah.
Mhm.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I just appreciate that. And I think I see that slowness mirrored around sort of the way you've described a lot of the way your relationships have developed, right? It's a friendship and then it's a little different and then it's back to like it. And it's not, I think just having that ability to be a little patient and excited at the same time. Like it's fun. It's fun to
Yeah.
play in. And I just really enjoyed the conversation today.
I would love to have you talk a little bit about your work as well and where people can find you. Links obviously will be in the show notes, but I'd love to. We
More
heard,
resources are better.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, of course. Well, if you like short format videos, Instagram and TikTok, I am falling out of love with the short format as like a way of communicating, but I do think it is decent for bite-sized, information and education. So Chill Polyamory, Instagram and TikTok. On patreon.com/chillpolyamory, I have 6 years of resources, of video essays, personal stories that I only feel comfortable like putting in a closed space,
Totally.
as well as access to live chats. I also offer pen pal services if you'd rather email at a bit slower pace. So that's patreon.com/chillpolyamory. I'm on YouTube. I have 2 channels. One has my live chats and my podcast episodes. So that's Chill Polyamory 2, TOO. But my main channel, Chill Polyamory, is, film and TV, sort of media analysis. I wanted to get into examples of non-monogamy, but if I want to talk shit about it, they're not real people. They're fictional characters. So I get to be messy and, not be a jerk. And I have a podcast called I Could Never, which is, also stories about non-monogamy and the many ways it can look.
Yeah. I would say we watched the Austin Powers. Is Austin Powers really a swinger the other night? And we got a kick out of that. So I can say they're fun conversations and also love. I just want to say too, love that there's another podcast out there doing similar work to what we're doing, because this is, the reason we started this show 7-ish years ago was because I was like, I just want to meet somebody new every week. I want to like learn and find all the different ways. And it didn't exist. And to hear now there's more of them out there doing this, like all for it. So thank you for putting that work out into the world. I know it is not easy to chase people down and get their stories and make it all come together. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I think we can never have enough. Like, let's as many examples as possible. Let's
Exactly.
1,000%. Yep. So let's do it. So thank you. Thank you for that. And before we let you go, is there anything else that we didn't ask about or talk about that you wanted to shout out into the world today?
Yeah, maybe not something that would be concise into a soundbite. I think the only thing relative to polyamory that has been on my mind recently is how we can get into habits with our long-term partners and then fall into those habits with brand new people we're dating, but that's not going to flow with them, and for example, I've been on dates where like I talk to my long-term partner of 11 years and I'll just casually mention my trauma as a joke, because he knows it's long healed, etc. If I'm on a third date with someone and I casually mention my trauma as a joke, they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Right, you don't know me like that yet, right?" So just like people who have been married for 30 years who then start dating after they get divorced, right? If you're polyamorous for a long time and you build a habit with some people, remember that each new relationship is a new relationship, and you don't just apply all of your behaviors to everybody that you're dating all at once, It's each doing its own thing.
Copy paste. Easy enough. Enough. Yep.
So that's what's been on my mind this week. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I need to work on that.
I love it.
Thank you both so much. This is a lovely chat. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was wonderful to chat and catch up and hear your story. Thank you for everything. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you. You too.
And we're back. Nailed it.
Nailing it. A same timer. We haven't done a same timer in a while.
No. Thank you so much, Genevieve, for coming on, sharing your story, and for all of the amazing work that you put out there. There's so much out there, and just thank you. Go
check out Genevieve's work. It is incredible. It's also really fun and lighthearted, and as you can imagine, chill.
And educational.
Chill and chillicational. I hope she's not listening.
Did you just invent a new word?
I hope she's not still listening because we've just completely butchered it. I'm sorry, Genevieve.
A quick reminder that links to all of Genevieve's work are over in your podcast show notes, in your podcast player, or on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the podcast tab.
And a couple of quick reminders about things we've got coming up, ways you can hang out with us. First of all, if you are part of our community or you would like to be a part of our community, you can join us for our next virtual workshop hosted by Jolie Hamilton. That workshop is called Befriending Jealousy, and that is coming up on May 8th. That is next week. So get your butt in there.
Come join us.
Come join us. We'd love to have you join us. After that, we've got our next virtual speed friending, which is coming up on May 16th. Those are open to anybody and everybody. You don't have to be part of our community, but we'd love to have you come and join us. You can find out more under the events tab of our website, or the big banner at the top is where you can sign up.
You can also hang out with us in person on May 23rd to the 26th over at the Bonobo Retreat in Northern California. And then we'll also be at Soul Play Festival June 12th to the 15th. Come join us at both of those, one of those, all of them, all of the above.
Any E, all of the above. D, all
Links,
of the above.
Again, are in the podcast show notes. And please reach out to us if you have any questions.
Yeah, we'd just love to have you come hang out with us. Those are going to be 2 really great retreats. And again, there are links to both of the websites for both of those events where you can learn much more than we have told you about. It would take the whole episode. There's so much going on.
There is. There's a lot. And next week, we have an interview with Celeste. Come back and join us then.
You don't want to miss it.
No.
It's a good one, full of laughs.
Right.
We have a good time.
Yeah. And until then, celebrate 7 years with us.
Yeah, celebrate. Send us an email about what the last 7 years have meant to you.
Yeah.
And we would love to hear from you.
I think that's it.
That's all.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.